We had an exciting morning session, and now we're going to start the afternoon session. We're going to give some ecosystem updates on some major projects that span our open source software development ecosystem, and we're going to start with the Technology Advisory Board with Frank. Frank, take it away.
So thanks, Paul. My name's Frank DeFalco, and a brief who is this guy? So I'm the original benevolent dictator of the OHDSI open source community, which means, yes, in fact, that all the issues that you've experienced are my fault. I'm the original author on Atlas and Web API, current author on Aries and Aries Indexer. I'm a package maintainer for Unomi and Achilles, and a contributor on ETL Cynthia and DQD. My full-time role is as a computational epidemiologist and senior director in the Observational Health Data Analytics Group within Global Epidemiology in the Office of the Chief Medical Officer at Johnson & Johnson. So that is a rough nesting doll way to find me if you're ever looking. Oh yeah, and recently I was appointed as some sort of cruel but likely deserved punishment as the chair of the OHDSI Technology Advisory Board. So what is the Technical Advisory Board, or TAB? This is a group that's focused on guiding and supporting the technical development of OHDSI open source projects. We're a group of people both from within the OHDSI community and with some external vendors and partners that try and collaborate to ensure the stability, security, supportability, and sustainability of the OHDSI open source projects. So this group meets on the first Friday of every month at 10 a.m. Eastern. We have our 1 hour meeting, and we have a sub channel within the OHDSI Open Source Working Group Teams channel. So that's where you could find us. So the commitments that the TAB has asserted are: one, transparency, to keep all the technical advisory board processes and technical decisions open and accessible to everyone within the community; to foster collaboration by working closely with the OHDSI community around technical innovation and excellence; and to promote inclusivity, ensuring that diverse perspectives are considered and valued in the OHDSI technical discussions and decisions. In 2023, under the leadership of the TAB at that time by Lee Evans, there were several large decisions that had been discussed and then made. The first was the deprecation of the OMOP CDM version 6. For those who aren't familiar, there was a draft of the CDM for version 6 intended to replace the CDM version 5. However, there were some technical limitations and a little bit of lack of coordination with the Hades working groups, which prevented its adoption. So last year, the TAB determined that the 6.0 version of the CDM would be deprecated in favor of ongoing use of the 5.x current version of the OMOP CDM. I think this is a great example of why something like the TAB is relevant and helpful within the community. Is we try and provide some kind of collaboration across the working groups, or a space for that to occur, so that in the future, as innovations within one group occur, hopefully there's a little bit more cross-pollination to the other groups within the community. Another conversation, and something I think that's been highlighted today, has been that the TAB determined what the open source ecosystem scope should be, and looking across what's occurring within OHDSI, and then what you just saw a terrific presentation on was the Darwin EU R packages. So the determination was made was, yes, of course, we're all one large open source ecosystem, and both the work done within Darwin EU and the OHDSI community should be considered supported software within the open source ecosystem of OHDSI. For 2024, I, as I mentioned, was appointed chair of the TAB. There's always an opening for applications of who would ever like to be the next chair. We asserted a roadmap of topics and discussions that will be occurring throughout the year, focused around architectural guidance, coordinating releases across the different working groups, determining proper database support policies, Similarly with Java and the versioning of that platform, how we manage support for those, some desires to improve security procedures and processes, expanding the use of Broadsea, which you'll hear a little bit more about from Lee in a few minutes, and performing a tool CDM mapping exercise. So here, the interest is to ensure that we keep an updated list of what fields in the CDM, which tools use, and that should help us with those coordination activities I mentioned before. We've been evaluating a tool or a platform really called Data Shield, looking at federated distributed analytics and trying to make sure that we provide a ongoing technology roadmap that would be accessible for the community. So inviting everyone to join the journey within the Technical Advisory Board. You can find the information related and the artifacts of the conversations, both on the tab wiki on the OHDSI GitHub, or within the Teams meeting. Within the Teams channel, you also find a OneNote document that contains our meeting notes and upcoming agendas. So thanks to Paul for sponsoring the tab and for Lee for guiding the group through inception last year. And remember, always tab, never spaces.
Unless you're, I guess we use tabs in Python too. Yeah, it makes sense. All right, thank you so much, Frank. Anthony, you want to give an update on Strategus?
Yes, let me attempt to share my screen.
And is that the right way to pronounce it?
I've heard a couple of different pronunciations. I call it Strategus.
Strategus, okay.
But yeah, call it whatever you like as long as you use the package. And so I wanted to just thank the conference organizers for giving me an opportunity to provide a quick update on Strategus and what's going on in the community. So for those that haven't heard this spiel, I'm going to go through it really quick, but the Strategus framework that is implemented in the Strategus package builds on the Hades analytic tools. And so Hades is a collection of R packages that facilitate generating reliable evidence in characterization using patient level prediction and population level effect estimation. And so the Strategus framework can be thought of as 3 phases. The first being creating a set of standardized inputs that represent your design choices. Those design choices are captured as a JSON document so that they are fully enumerated and reviewable by someone. It's human readable. Then those JSON specifications are fed into Strategus, and Strategus will basically stand up your execution environment and then execute your study using all of the Hades packages specified. And from there, Strategus produces standardized outputs, and those are in the form of CSVs, which again can be reviewed by participants in the study so that they can be assured of what they are contributing back to the network coordinating center if they're using that for the network study. So the Strategus framework uses what we call Hades Strategus modules, and the module is simply a lightweight wrapper around the Hades packages themselves. And what those those modules provide is a way to make building blocks out of the various Hades packages. And so the fun analogy we like to use in OHDSI is the Lego building blocks. And so we have building blocks around some of the characterization type packages that are necessary. We also have modules that are wrappers around the estimation packages. And finally, we have the same modules for prediction as well. And so what this allows us to do is to build up standardized analytics, one Lego at a time. And so Strategus can be really thought of as the vehicle that lets you take those building blocks and get them to your reliable evidence. And thanks to GPT for improving our Lego image from last year. So modules can be combined to accommodate different study designs. And to that end, we can combine things like cohort generator and cohort incidents. And that is exactly the model that we used for the how often large scale incident rate study that we did at the US OHDSI Symposium this past year. You could even layer on things like patient level prediction if you wanted to extend the how often large scale incidence rate analyses. And finally, you could use all of the Legos if you really want to. And this is kind of the approach that we used for the Save Our Sisyphus challenge last year. And so why do we think Strategus is the right approach for network studies? So over the many years of Odyssey network studies, we found that our dependencies change over time. So we may publish a study and then folks that want to run it go about installing the software and things change, and it becomes a bit hard to reproduce the same environment that, say, the package developer created in another institution. And so the R ecosystem provides a mechanism called RENV, and that essentially allows you to declare the exact dependencies that you need to execute a project. And so Strategus is making use of RENV to make sure that the execution environment is reproducible and, in fact, inventories every piece that you need to run your study. And you can think of this as like a specification that you would put together if you were repairing your car. You need to know the exact part numbers and how they all fit together. And so from last year, we had a lot of participants in our network studies, and we learned a lot both from the SOS challenge as well as the How Often challenge. And something that we spent a lot of time at the Hades hackathon at last year's symposium talking about was ways in which we could improve and change Strategus based on the community experience. And we focused on a number of points, which I've tried to distill into 3 here. The first of which is the module approach, which works well in terms of isolating the different Hades packages, but we had some thoughts about how we might make that process a little bit more streamlined to make it easier for folks to install and get that working, because that can be a challenge at times. The next point was talking about the use of the keyring package. And for those that are unfamiliar, you can think of keyring as a mechanism to securely store your connection string to your CDM. And so Strategus makes use of this package, but underlying keyring, there are some infrastructure things that you have to install. And so that can be a challenge depending on your environment. So we're looking at ways we might make that easier so that the overall process of installing Strategus is a bit easier as well. And finally, we looked at the input specification, the JSON document I mentioned earlier, and ways in which we might both simplify and make that file a bit easier to digest for humans as well. So after that great discussion at last year's symposium, we agreed that we would create a Strategus subteam that is part of the Hades working group. So earlier this year, we formed that sub-team, and it's focused on advancing the Strategus package for network study execution. And so a few of our high-level goals are to, number one, improve collaboration around the development of Strategus. We had a lot of really good discussions both at symposium and during the various network studies, as well as even on GitHub and the forums. And we want to just make sure that there is a forum for folks that are interested in Strategus to come and have those discussions in real time. Along those lines, we want to make sure that we're advancing the ideas that were discussed at the symposium. And we also want to see about implementing containerized solutions for running Strategus via Broadsea and Arachne. So a bit of our high-level roadmap, we had a release of Strategus earlier this year, and that contained many bug fixes from the SOS and How Often studies. It improved the stability of the modules and their installation. And so for this upcoming quarter, we're planning on another release that's going to still be fixing bugs and trying to just make sure that we have a stable platform in the v0.x release stream. And then we plan to transition into a major release in the 3rd quarter of this year. And this is still taking form. So please, feel free to jump in on this if you have ideas. But we want to basically repackage Hades Strategus modules into an R package that can use the Hades-wide lock file for instantiation. And if you're not sure what that means, come join us at the Hades working group. You can find out all the details. And ultimately, we want to make Strategus a formal part of Hades. At the moment, if you want to use Paul's fish analogy, we are a fish that's trying to catch up to the school of fish that are inside of Hades, and we want to do that soon. And so how can you get involved if you're interested in Strategus? Well, you can join the Hades working group first and foremost. You can then join the Hades Strategus subteam, and we meet the 2nd Thursday of the month at noon Eastern time. And our next meeting is in May the 9th specifically. And if you want to review and participate in the issues, those are posted up on GitHub, and I can put some links to all of those in the chat. So thanks everybody for listening. and I'll turn it over to Lee.
All right, so my name's Lee Evans. I've done a number of things in OHDSI over the years. So one of them was Broadsea. I kind of started off the project. Ajit Longe has really taken over Broadsea, I would say, for the last couple of years. It's doing a great job. So I wanted to talk today about the next release of Broadsea 3.5. And I guess that will be available next week. So everything you're going to see today, you'll be able to do yourself next week. And just in general, for people that don't know much about Broadsea, it's the quickest, easiest way to get all the OHDSI tools installed. So if you want to have access to, have your own Atlas and Hades, and even like a demo Postgres database to work with a little mini synthetic data CDM, it's all there in Broadsea. Essentially just clone the GitHub repo, run one command, and all those things are up and running. So you really can have that running in about 5-10 minutes. But you have to have Docker installed as well. So it's based on Docker and container services. So each of those applications, we built Docker images. And so what I'm going to talk about today in this new release is some additional applications that we've added to Broadsea. And you can see them right here. So we have pgadmin, specifically pgadmin 4, and Jupyter. So for people who haven't used pgadmin, it's a really popular tool, both open source tools, and it's a great client for Postgres databases. So you can write SQL, and I'm going to give a little demo. I think we have enough time for me just to show you that. And then with Jupyter, it's a notebook development environment. And so what we're really doing here with this release is broadening the scope of Broadsea to give people a few more choices. And in particular, if you have a Postgres database, if you keep your data, your CDM in Postgres, this will be great because you can use that pgadmin client to access your CDM. If you don't have your CDM in Postgres, it's also useful because the application database that Atlas uses is Postgres. So a long time ago, originally, it supported different types of application databases, DBMS, but we ended up just with Postgres. So anyone using Atlas, if you want to get access to that Atlas database, this will be a good tool to use. And just emphasize for Jupyter, I think most people are familiar with developing notebooks, this sort of literary approach to developing code. And I'll give a little demo of that. And I think the big thing here for people is that we're providing some more support for Python and Julia, because I know some people are interested in Julia as opposed to R. And there is R support in Jupyter Notebooks, but I think really the focus is going to continue to be using RStudio, which is how we host Hades within Broadsea. So I don't think that's changing, but there will be an R interpreter in Jupyter that you could potentially use. All right, so just I'm going to be showing my desktop. It's going to be hard to read the commands that I'm using. So I just wanted to show them here on this slide for you. So we have, essentially we've added 2 new profiles to the Broadsea Docker Compose file. So Docker Compose is kind of a framework around which containers you want to run and which applications. So I worked on this pgadmin profile, and Ajit worked on Jupyter. So essentially, you just need to run this one command, Docker Compose. It's 2 dashes there, profile, pgadmin 4 up -d, and then similarly for the Jupyter notebook. And you will have those applications up and running on your desktop or on your server if you want. All right, so I think we have enough time. I'll switch over to my desktop. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's good enough. So just to show you what I've done here, just in advance, it only takes 5 minutes, but I thought I wouldn't keep people waiting. So we've got, I did this Docker Compose profile default up -d. So that brings up all of the Broadsea applications that we think people want to use together. So we're not assuming that people always want to use pgadmin 4, that they always want to use Jupyter Notebook. So we didn't put them into the default profile. So I ran that, and importantly for this demonstration, that includes the demo Broadsea Atlas database, which is a Postgres database. And then to start these 2 new applications, I ran this one line. So Docker Compose profile pgadmin 4 to start that. and then Jupyter Notebook to start that up. And we'll switch to my browser. Okay. So this is what you'll see with that pgadmin 4 interface. And you can, there's a .env file, which is really the configuration file for Broadsea. And within there, you can specify what user ID you want to use, what password you want to use as the default to get into the screen. So pgadmin is, it's web-based, and this is multi-user as well. So if you want to have multiple people accessing the database client, you can do that. So for this example, I'm going to use the default, and we will log in. Okay, and this is what you'll see when you log in. And when I click on here, it's going to open a database because I've set it up previously. But I'll show you how I configured that. So Broadsea Atlas DB, remember I said that's the Postgres demo database. And so I configured it. Let me see. I go to properties. Okay, I just gave it a name. And then because it's running a Docker container, I just put the Docker container name. But if you have your own Postgres database, you could put in an IP address, DNS kind of name. The port, in my case, it's just Postgres as the user, and then there's a password that I entered in. So when you open this for the first time, you'll want to do that. And if you just want to use the Broadsea one, then this will work for you. You'll be able to see the password for that in the Docker Compose file or the .env file. Actually, you'll see it later on my other screen as well. So once you're in here, what can you do? So this is the Postgres database. We got a demo CDM. It's nice, just synthetic data, a few patients in it. This is just giving you this dashboard gives you the stats on the current things that the database is doing. So it's not doing that much at the moment. Let me see. So we want to go to the demo CDM and the tables, and I will slowly find the person table. And then we see, let's look at the first 100 rows of that person table. Now you can create your own queries, your SQL scripts. I'm not going to show that here, but this is obviously an example of just running some SQL against that database. So you'll see we've got the person ID, gender, year of birth. So nice new tool. It's also, it's good if you want to see what processes are running. So if you're having locking on that database, you can use that. If you want to write your own queries, etc., etc. So, and this database is a little bit different. The Atlas DB, it has database security set up in here. So it's in a separate database under, I think, Web API security. So if you wanted to go in and update database security that way, you could do it, but I would recommend using Atlas to do it the proper way. All right, so let's move over to Jupyter Lab. This is a little different. There's no login. It's a single user web-based application. It supports Python, Julia, and R, as I mentioned. I'm just going to talk about Python today because I think that's the nicest sort of utility of this. And I'll just take a step back for a second that if you weren't even doing anything with OHDSI, but you wanted to have a set of tools just to try out SQL and R and Python against the Postgres database, well, Broadsea has got you covered because it's all of those things, and you can run it all on your local laptop or on wherever you're working. So I think this is a really nice sort of expansion of what Broadsea supports, and I think even in a teaching environment, it'll be great to have students just run this on their own laptop. All right, so last part of the demo, because I'm focused on Python, I just thought I'd run through that. So let's see, we'll just go cell by cell. So we'll install the binary, the kind of driver that we're using to connect to Postgres. We'll import that library. And then here's a connection string. I thought it would be good to give you the connection string if you want to use it with Broadsea. There's nothing secret here. These are in the public GitHub repo. It's a local Postgres database. So user Postgres, password mypass. That's what you would also use when you set up that connection in the pgadmin screen. So that's just a string. We're going to connect to the database. It'd be nice if it gave you a message there, but yep, it connected. It would tell you if it didn't. And then just for this test, this example, we're just going to do basically the same thing we did in the PG admin screen. We're going to select from that demo CDM person table, and we'll just grab the first 5 rows of that again, and then we'll just print them off. So as I mentioned before, that the first row that we saw here, this is what we're seeing now over in Jupyter. I'm sure there's a way to format that a lot nicer. And then the last part is we're just going to close that cursor out and disconnect from the database, so it's nice and clean. So that's really the new functionality, the new features that we have in Broadsea 3.5. I hope people are going to enjoy it. I think if you're a Python developer, you'll enjoy it. It'll give you a chance to work in Python. And of course, going forward, hopefully people will start to develop Python packages or update the ones that are out there to connect directly to the CDM. So we're able to support Python developers more than we do today. All right, let me see. Let's go back to here. I'll just go here. All right. So I put these in just in case we weren't able to do the demo. It's always good to have a backup. And as I mentioned, it's going to be available. It'll be released early next week. I think Ajit's working on that. So again, I just wanted to say thanks to Ajit for all the hard work he's done over the last couple of years. And I hope you'll enjoy working with the new Broadsea.
Thanks, Lee. I had a quick question for you. Where is your Python kernel? Wasn't that in an existing container, or is that a new container that you're running your Python environment?
So that is the Jupyter container.
Oh, so that you're right, because I thought Hades ran Python as well.
Yeah, that's true. So the Python is part of Hades. So there are certain functions within Hades that require it. The predictive analytics piece in particular uses Python, but it's using Python libraries. That will be a separate Python version that's sitting inside the Hades container. And
Okay.
so this Python is part of the Jupyter container.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Anthony, and thank you, Frank. I'll give a quick update on our. Oh, we had a question in the audience from Paul. Did you want to ask your question?
I'm happy to answer the question.
Oh yeah. If we have something that's like a much larger data set, and perhaps we're going to want to use a large compute environment, have you gotten to the point where you've extracted out all the way up to the orchestration layer, or is this primarily meant for sort of local development?
So a lot of people will use a larger DBMS for their CDM. And so what you would do is you would update the source and source daemon table inside the Postgres database to point to that other DBMS. So if you have Snowflake, you would put you'd specify it's a Snowflake connection, and then you can scale up as much as you want. So the Postgres application database will always be very small. Yeah. Any other questions?
Vishnu?
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Lee, it's great to see you in at least on camera, because we've kind of borrowed your work on Broadsea, and we've converted that into a Helm chart and run some Kubernetes. So I've just put that in the chat there. Is there, when will OHDSI officially adopt Kubernetes, and maybe we can have an official Helm repo, Paul, within OHDSI, which would be, and that also that's the second part of the question, is the Broadsea Docker Compose file. When you spin it up, it runs on a local machine. How do you envisage this being used in a multi-user environment where you're hosting it on a server and you have multiple users logging in? That's one of the challenges that we've had when you have multiple users and you want to manage a central piece of infrastructure for multiple users just to log in and use. How do you see that working, or how do others do it?
Yeah, so you can install Broadsea onto a single server, multiple servers. I think the limitation is more around you don't want to have two different web APIs pointing to the same application database, because they're not guaranteed to create unique sort of GUIDs, so they will interfere with each other that way. You can have load balancing in front, so that's a way to sort of spread the load. If it depends, if you've got like two teams that don't really work together, then you can have two instances of these containers Broadsea running on one or more servers, and put load balancers in there as well. If you want people to work together, there's probably some limit around how big, how many people you can support with one instance of Broadsea. I'm very open to adding Helm and Kubernetes support to Broadsea. I think it's just a matter of we haven't had time to really focus on that. So just drop me an email, let me know if you want to talk about that.
So we would love to work with you. I've got a fantastic Kubernetes engineer who's working with me now. I've got a little bit of Kubernetes. I scratch the surface of Kubernetes, but he knows the guts of it. So we'd love to work with you and the wider community to kind of put together an official OHDSI Helm chart. That'll be great.
Excellent. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks for that. Thanks for the offer. Okay, Paul.
All right. Thank you, Lee. And so I'll give a quick update on our Kheiron training program. So we offered, we've now done this for 2 years. We've offered a yearly training program for free for the OHDSI community to train new developers in our software development methods, our testing, how to set up our environments, and really with the hope of helping them get the mentoring they need to help grow their careers, but also understand how to learn the OHDSI way for how we do software development and get them involved with a maintainer with one of our packages. And so last year we increased our Kheiron faculty to include Nate, Clark, Katie, Anthony, and Dan. This has been a big improvement. We had 20 Kheirons in this year's cohort. And it was great to be able to give them a lot more local mentoring based upon their interests and be able to then separate them around. So we had 20 Kheirons last year that are graduating now, and I don't know why my computer decided to ditch me on that one presentation. It did not care for what I was saying. So how far did I get?
We lost you at 20.
Dropped?
You said 20 and you were gone.
Okay, and so I will share my screen. Hopefully this will work better. So anyway, and we still have 10 minutes, so we're okay. So I really want to thank the other Kheiron faculty. It's really made this program so much richer in terms of building a better experience for the students, and it's just been really fun to learn from them and have them interacting with there's so many different directions our community is going in with all the different technologies that we're using. It really has been very advantageous to have a larger faculty group. So just for this cohort is to onboard new contributors, to become active and become maintainers. We see this as a great way for doing career development and software development. Even at like undergraduate training programs in computer science, you don't learn a lot of practical skills in software development about how to manage your Git repos, how to do good testing integration, how to be able to, and so we find that this mentoring and interaction has been a very positive, a positive interaction for our students. We also wanted to create a global perspective of our ecosystem. So we really present many different sides, from the data management side to the data analysis side. We present different software development environments. And so this was with the hope of trying to build better cross connectors between the projects, and so that as we create developers within our community, they can be aware of other parts that are developing similar activities. So we are opening this up for our third cohort. So if you or anyone you know who has an interest in being more involved in the OHDSI open source community, now is the time to apply for this. This is a free training program. It can be for new to seasoned software developers to learn how to work in the OHDSI way. We do ask for people to commit about 10% of their time. We meet in person twice a month. And that's usually around noon, where we'll have you interact with the Technology Advisory Board to kind of hear from the folks about how we try to make decisions on standardizing our software and making sure it's going to work for our end users. The program runs from September through April, and then we often have direct sessions on how to learn how to use GitHub for project management and code versioning, how to submit issues, how to do a pull request, and then of course, how to set up your own development environment for setting up Hades, downloading the vocabulary, setting up your CDM, setting up Atlas and the Web API, learning about Broadsea and Docker, and how to conduct a network study. And so this has really been, I have learned a lot just by going along with this program and bringing in new developers and hearing about some of the technology. Some of the technology you saw today was because we brought them in to present to our Kheiron training program. And so it's meant to be a cohort as we train people as a group to learn how to be involved in our great open source community. So I also wanted to really thank, and so what we do each year is a few of our Kheiron students, we have really are like exemplars and are really active in our community, and we invite them to serve on faculty moving forward. So this is how we're growing our family of Kheiron faculty, and I'm really excited that we have 3 new faculty members that we can add into our family this year, and they are John Gresh. John is a consultant that works for the National Association of Community Health Centers, NAC, and he has done a tremendous job helping organize the Databricks users group. He does a lot of work on Atlas and in Java on the Web API, and he's really been a great addition to our team. We also want to congratulate and thank Hayden Spencer, who is a consultant for the VA, who does work on a lot of different GitHub projects within Odyssey, and has a good perspective on software development. And lastly, we want to thank Kyle Zolovenchik from Tufts, who is a data scientist and a very active contributor to our community. So we're really excited to bring on more faculty members into our program. We're excited to be able to provide more direct mentoring for our students. And so if you are interested, or if you know someone who's interested, this is a great way to advance your career, get some great mentoring and build your professional network, and be part of our Odyssey open source community. Applications are now open. Here's the link to our application form. And really, we're looking for folks who are interested in becoming an active developer within our community. And so please come and join us, and we will announce the new cohort in June.